Hi guys, we are already at July 1964 and this was a pretty exciting month. Okay, so now my parents are married. They are living with my grandmother at 576 Jubilee Street in Emmaus, right by the railroad tracks. I remember them well. And so my mom's moved out of her parents' house. And, think about that. She's 16. She's not going to be 17 until September. And she is now living with her mother in law, who she barely knows, her new husband, who she also barely knows. And my Uncle Joe was still living there at the time. My grandfather had died, remember, back in December of 63. So my grandmother was living on Jubilee Street with my dad, who was then 19, and my Uncle Joe, who was 15, because he's a year younger than my mom. So that is the household there on Jubilee Street. And I'm not thinking she's having any fun now. Her parents live, well, she lived up until that time on North 2nd Street. And I don't remember the address, but it was very close to where I grew up on Minor Street. I think it's Ridge and North Street, 2nd Street in between Ridge and North and Emmaus. But anyway, so that is their life right now. So it's summer, she's pregnant, and living with basically strangers. So that's not that much fun. But we have other things going on in the world. On July 2nd, I thought this was pretty interesting. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act and Voting Right Act into law. So JFK had started that. He had died before it became law. Johnson got to sign it into law, and basically it outlaws discrimination of all kinds. So it was huge, and everything that I've read about it and seen in movies, it was just a really big thing. And also, Bobby had taken over on really getting Johnson to sign this. I mean, he was really, really a huge part of it, so it kind of went down on his legacy also. So anyway, so that happened on the 2nd. That's right before the 4th of July. So that's kind of cool, and they probably planned it that way. But okay, so moving on. The 9th, Courtney Love was born. For you guys who don't know who Courtney Love is, she had a group called Hole, but really she's just famous for being married to Kurt Cobain of Nirvana until the day he committed suicide. And but I didn't know she was my age, and she had kind of a rough go at it, but I didn't like her music. So anyway, moving on. The 10th, the Beatles released their third album, A Hard Day's Night. The most famous song I remember from A Hard Day's Night was Can't Buy Me Love. And so that happened, so that they released their album on the 10th of July. Now, do you see how quick this is happening with the Beatles? I mean, basically, they're just rolling them out, and it's working for them too, isn't it? Then on the 15th, we had the Republican National Convention. Barry Goldwater gets nominated for the Republican Party. So the campaign is on its way because there's an election coming up in November. On the 18th, Wendy Williams is born. I put that down here because I really like her. She has her own talk show, and she's kind of crazy. And I used to watch her when I was at the treadmill at the gym because they always had her show on then. And I got to really like her because she's crazy. So you should look into that. I'm sure she's all over YouTube. On the 20th, the first surfing record hit #1. So we've got all these Beatles songs coming out, okay? But now we got something different than the Beatles, and it's Jan and Dean's Surf City. We know where this heads, but I thought it was really interesting because I guess I just thought that the Beach Boys had the first one, but they didn't. It was Jan and Dean, and they actually have a movie out. If you ever want to know who they are, there's a movie out about them that I watched a while ago. The 22nd, David Spade is born. Another person I didn't realize was my age, but I love David Spade. I've seen him perform live. He's hysterical. The guy ended up crying the whole time, laughing, crying the whole time. On the 24th, Barry Bonds is born, which is also pretty interesting because we all remember back in 2007 when that scandal, his drug scandal, and then he wasn't put into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I don't know if he is now or not. You guys would know, but I don't really know. Then on the 25th, okay, so the Beatles released their third album on the 10th. On the 25th, it hits number one and stays there for 14 weeks. So basically, the next 3 months, this album stays at number one. That is crazy. And the next day, 26th, Sandra Bullock is born. Yay. Love Sandra Bullock. She's awesome. And then on the 28th, Lori Loughlin is born. And in case you guys don't know who she is, Becky from Full House. We love Becky. So had some awesome birthdays in July. A little bit of politics. Not too much going on with the Vietnam War. But we do now have a Civil Rights Act that's signed. So that's pretty great. Anyway, until August. Bye.